Of course, my generation isn't all about toys. But who are we kidding? It's because of the endless playthings provided us that made it so great. And here's a few of the more unfamiliar. I'm Victor, and straight out of the Gen experience, the deep cuts from favorite franchises made famous in the 1980s. Traditionally, a deep cut is a rarely heard musical track only die-hard fans would identify. It would stand to reason then that the term could be used to define anything that is recognizable or familiar to only the most passionate enthusiasts of a special interest. In this case, the most famous Toylines of the 80s. Now once you click like and subscribe, we're ready to go. And let's see how many deep cuts you remember. Jazz, the famous Autobot voiced by Scatman Crothers in G1, may not be a deep cut, but his availability through Cereal certainly was. Talk about a complete breakfast.
A little heavy on the electrons, Electron.
However, with that being more of a sweepstakes to win the well-known Transformer via 26,000 instant win stickers included, he wasn't available to everyone. No, this deep cut for the Transformers is for 3 underrepresented toys who I remember always wanting, but not wanting to wait for: Camshaft, Downshift, and Overdrive. They were mail-away action figures available in both the US and Japan. Only slightly smaller than their counterparts, they were Autobots that had not transitioned from the Diaclone line to the US branded Transformers. This offer allowed 3 more original figures to be available, and slapped with the Autobot insignia, they were the stuff of dreams. Did you have one? I never did, but even today, they look totally rad. But they've also never been updated into any major retail line, and I'm not counting the uninspired alternators. So Hasbro, get cracking on updating these in the Legacy line, so I can finally fulfill a childhood wish.
I have the flower!
Bet you thought I was gonna say Wonder Bread He-Man, huh? He's low-hanging fruit, so I went a different direction for a Masters of the Universe deep cut, and instead chose one from the very end of the line.
This is the end of the road.
Like, the very end. It was easy to think of some of the Power of Grayskull pieces that were planned for 1988, but released quickly in 1987 with the collapse of Motu imminent. But no, not even them. My choice involves a craze just hitting the market: light beam tech. Toward the end of Motu's life, they debuted the Artillery and the Beam Blaster.
The first light-action weapon ever.
Marketed about being the first toy of its kind, it certainly wouldn't be the last. Captain Power, Brave Star, and even Wheel of Fortune would all use this technology as Motu faded from glory to allow other, not as successful franchises shine. The Artillery was Skeletor's hovering laser cannon, but any of the heroes could strap on the Beam Blaster, and when it hit just right, boom! An evil warrior would topple from his perch, set it up, and do it all over again. I think playability might have been enhanced if the Artillery could also return fire, so as to even the odds, and perhaps release the Beam Blaster from its yielder. What do you think of these 2 often forgotten accessories for your Masters collection?
But only with a bullseye to the evil eye. Figures sold separately. You supply the battery.
But as for Artillery and the Beam Blast, they are undeniably deep cuts. One thing you can say about Revell's Power Lords toy line was nothing was off the table. Short-lived or not, credit must be given to the design and manufacturing budget for this line, whose original figures did not use any shared molds or have similar designs. Each character is unique, and in the second wave, even more bizarre, if that was possible with toys like this.
It's Lord Power. He zapped Krypton's head.
What looks to be straight out of Sid's backyard of tortured toys, the later wave of Power Lords released were the Beast Machines. No, not these Beast Machines, these. Sharing similarities in design, they were no less disturbing. Not sure how ready kids were for human or humanoid creatures grafted onto military hardware. This is some alarming level of wartime experimentation gone wrong. Just how endearing is a half biological life form and half a tank to the marketplace audience? Wait, what am I thinking? It's the 80s. Anything went. Although the subline is not remembered as much as the first line of figures, and believe me, I didn't know how many fans of this toy line were out there. I picked Saver to represent the deep cut. Not sure if that is a play on Savior, or because he unapologetically resembles our favorite other blonde gym bro, He-Man, that he should be savored? Well, good thing this stud shoots only safety-tipped missiles, if you know what I mean. I do believe this was a quick-to-market decision. With the clock ticking, new larger figures and new vehicles were pitched at a meeting, and coming down to the wire, they just slapped one on top of the other and voila! New toys. Needless to say, the Power Lords were not long for this world. Now for something a little less peculiar. Or are they? Everyone knows Strawberry Shortcake. Passing fans may know some characters' names and that they smelled like their specific sweet treat nom de plume. But even in Shortcake fandom, you may not always remember this deep cut. Café Olé. Olé is part of Strawberry's international friends. There were 5. Released in 1984, Café Olé was a new Mexican friend along with Crepe Suzette, Mint Tulip, and more. Café smelled like a cafe mocha and was accompanied by her pet, Burrito Burro. You heard me. Her little pet donkey that I cannot confirm or deny smelled like a Taco Bell Burrito Supreme. Maybe her tousled red hair was too close to Strawberry's, or the classic serape was stereotypical, or maybe corporate fear of having their little international celebration turn appropriation by bored keyboard warriors resulted in no modern take on this character. However, when looking at the 21st century designs of their friends from Paris and Asia, I think Olé dodged a bullet. Café Olé got the big adios and moved out on her pack mule. A couple of these lines might be on the far side of my original playtime, as I call it, but my interest had me keeping up with the newest offerings, trends, and releases in the toy aisles, like Bravestar. Bravestar may not have had the success of his predecessors, especially with some ninja reptiles coming up from behind, but it was a nicely made show, even if it did close the Filmation Animation Studios. As for the toy line, it was so-so. There was only one wave of toys released for this franchise. They had promised a second wave, but it was canceled due to lack of interest. The characters may not be as memorable outside of Marshall Bravestar and maybe the crazy-looking Tex Hex, but they were all regulars from the show. All but this guy. In the vein of 3030, Bravestar's horse partner, Colonel Borobot is a vehicle for the heroes to ride, who then transforms into a humanoid robot who has more than a passing resemblance to Otto from the movie Airplane. I wonder if that means Bravestar had to activate him with a lever on his beltline. The Colonel, here with his big dumb face and oversized limbs, continues the design motif of the Old West. Kind of. Like that little blue cap. Union or Confederate? You tell me. With his puzzling name, Colonel Borobot was more a curiosity than a legacy plaything, and took a spot in the toy line that could have been saved for another main character who actually appeared in the cartoon. For that, he gets my deep cut pick for this lackluster toy line. Have you ever heard of this character before rushing to look him up now? You couldn't avoid My Pretty Pony in the 80s. Or should I say, My Little Pony, as it was only when they changed the name and their color schemes that the world would go bucking crazy over these steeds. And how could you not have some love for these trippy ponies with rump tattoos? Known as cutie marks, the ponies live in the same universe as Optimus Prime and have their own subculture called bronies. Actually, is that still a thing? The ponies might be legendary, but the waterfall, not so much. It might surprise you there was both a castle and a stable playset for these unarticulated equines. Each toy could do a little more than look adorable, and you could do a little more than comb their hair. No action features to speak of, unless you got the waterfall. And waterfall is a bit generous, as it's not much more than a rain cloud a pony stands under. Waiting for the nimbostratus to burst, the pony can have a quick wash, as long as there's no electrical activity in the area. Nobody wants to smell that. With all the money for planning, design, and construction for this mega franchise, this is what they came up with. The only pony that needs to be sitting under a rain cloud is a gray-blue donkey named Eeyore. Did you see him? Wait, look again. Or should I say, Luki. There he is. It's Luki from She-Ra, Princess of Power, a character that appeared in every episode of the cartoon, showing you where he hid during the episode and explaining the lesson of that day's story. His action figure was not released until the very last year in limited supply, and with the static and freakish design they came up with, I can't say I blame them. He was released with the last 2 original action figure dolls, Spinnerella and Natasha, the Great Rebellion's fisherman. Wait, is that right? Luki was a smaller character that can be harder to find, but more than that, when talking Princess of Power, Luki is usually shoved to the sidelines, pushed in a closet, or simply denied existence, until Motu Classics did a 2-pack of Luki and Cowl, the Know-It-Owl. Did anyone else think Luki was a play on the Norse trickster god Loki? Or was that just me? Perhaps with his great space coaster aesthetic, Luki is less popular to revisit in modern takes on the franchise. But as he was a vital part of the lore, his original figures remain a deep cut in Princess of Power history. A treasure from the 80s, sometimes forgotten but never far away, Jem has an incredible history of her own and pops up far less than she deserves. But that makes the alter ego of Jerrica Benton all more mysterious. From the very beginning of the cartoon series, called The Beginning, the Starlight Girls were ever present in this garish 80s over-the-top animated series. A group of diverse orphans or troubled girls who were foster children to Jerrica and her sisters. Runaways, kicked out, abandoned, juvenile delinquents, or left on doorsteps. We have little clue to their backgrounds as that storyline was barely developed. This is why the inclusion of 3 Starlight Girl dolls in the line make them the Jem deep cut we've been waiting for. Ashley, who got the most screen time but looks like a dime store skipper doll. You thought I was going to say stripper, didn't you? She looked nothing like her on-screen counterpart. Well, she was joined by Chrissy and Bonnie, probably the most significant of the characters. Bonnie was part of a 3-episode arc trying to find her father, who had conceived her with a Vietnamese woman during the war. Talk about soap opera. Jem rocked Barbie's face off in that department.
Raymond!
It made sense to have them put some of the girls on the shelves, but it was a little too late. And since they didn't really fit the fashion and fame Jem promised, they were not that popular. Ultimately, Jem was crushed under the high heels of Barbie and the Rockers through corporate espionage, and the 3 Starlight Girl toys are now completely forgotten as part of this once short-lived but huge toy line. Kenner's Mask may have been the last Die Hard show I needed to watch weekday afternoons, and who could deny it when you heard the first strains of that awesome 80s rock theme song? But Mask had some great gimmicks, not to mention character names like Dusty Hayes, Alex Sector, Cliff Dagger, and Hondo McClane. The toy line consisted of 4 waves, and they were pretty easy to find in a time where toy shelf space and stock felt unlimited. Merchandise was found at brick and mortar retail. There was no other place to get your fix. As most toys of the time, the last wave would be slim and numbers were low, while Mask continued to sell after their show was off the air. But it isn't the Wave 4 that makes the deep cut pick, although Stiletto and the rest would certainly be more unknown to the casual fan. I'm picking both the Billboard Blast and the Pit Stop Catapult mini playset as the Mask obscure selections from their vast line. Billboard Blast may owe a little of its existence to a feature on Boulder Hill, when the cannon barrels come out of the gas station sign from above. But this time, there's room for a gunner, and if that's not enough, it's also a missile launch platform. As for the Pit Stop Catapult, Sly Rax of Venom was there to take the snake oil fueling station to catapulting Grinder and back. Not quite sure what they mean by Grinder, but I do know this artillery base shoots tires at passing cars. NASCAR has never seemed more dangerous than in Mask. So even if you're fans of or remember the incredible vehicles and drivers, you may not remember these blink and miss it pieces from the famous Mask racing series. That also included the Collector Toll Booth from 1987. Mask was a perfect new blending of both Transformers and G.I. Joe. Speaking of G.I. Joe, the deepest cut of G.I. Joe, a real American hero toy line for me, has to be StarDuster. For those collecting today, you may not remember it right off. But no, StarDuster is headed to new stardom in the G.I. Joe Classified series in the near future. StarDuster was rare, not just in numbers released, but rare in awareness. He was the first figure only offered by the G.I. Joe breakfast cereal Action Stars, not only appearing in the commercial, but on the cover of the box. That enticed you to mail in for a plain box action figure of the new character. StarDuster would soon be offered by Hasbro Direct in the late 80s, before being retired soon after. So few of us got a chance to know you, StarDuster. Or Edward Schuyler. Schuyler, because of course that's your real name. But Guy with Jetpack works just as well. Who out there got one of the originals? There were mail-away opportunities in toy inserts and breakfast cereals, as you can see, but when a popular franchise partnered with a popular kids' meal, you'd expect nothing more than an almost inarticulate or static figure of one of your favorites. A cheap version in a new form to attract you to a fast food meal made for kids. When it came to transforming robot toys, you could almost guarantee it wouldn't transform. Unless, of course, it was McDonald's changeables. Those were just the bomb. But GoBots would change all that. The GoBots Wendy's deal was not a free toy and a kid's meal, but a 99-cent purchase with purchase deal, where new and original action figure characters were available. These were real GoBots, with bios, real action figures to add to your collection. Frankly, they weren't that interesting or complex, with transformations no more difficult than flipping off a light switch. But not just doppelgangers or versions of existing characters, but real characters introduced into the toy line, which made this Wendy's offer much sought after. This wouldn't have been as cool if it had just been reproductions of Leader 1 or Psykill, but because this was the only way to get Beamer, Oddball, Powwow, or any of the three others, they represent when the B-side is just as popular as the A-side. Lesser known toys that have not only been forgotten, but are often disregarded, are some of the most fun. That is where the Thundercats score with the biggest deep cut on the list. This deep cut is not named for one of your exes that can't control their tonsil tickler.
Marcia, I think I just felt your tongue in my mouth.
It's called a French kiss, Charlie.
But for a deadly, devouring monster with an attack tongue. Tangasaurus appeared in one episode of the Thundercats cartoon. Brief and unremarkable, was good enough to leverage it for a mini playset or creature toy with a gimmick I still can't believe. An unimportant character or role played in the show made its way into a pretty creative and exciting toy that I certainly would want in the 80s. Use the lever to not only open the jaws of this crocodilian-like creature, but stretch out and turn the tongue so that it can be retracted, curling around, as the box says, most Thundercats action figures, as you then pull back into the jaws of the beast. I guess so the figure can be eaten. That was it. Sounds like a great death trap and an awesome 80s toys we often forget or don't even know existed, like in the case for me. What about you? How good were you with your Tangasaurus? Let me know in the comments. So those are some of my picks for the great deep cuts from favorite franchises made famous in the 80s. Those weren't the only B-sides that deserve some attention. I left a whole lot more out. Which others can you think of? Maybe ones you loved but feel had been forgotten. I hope you've pressed like and subscribe for more incredible content straight from the Gen Experience, the era that brought us everything worth remembering. Stuff that's up my alley, and I hope it's up yours. Check out the channel for more, and I really thank you for watching, especially all the way to the end.